everybody. Welcome to virtual day trip to wine country. I'm Sam Kimball from New York Wine Events, and happy Monday, everybody. We're excited about today's trip. I am coming to you live from Lodi, California, which is an amazing place for wine, an amazing region in the San Joaquin County that produces some incredible wines. I'm a huge fan. We're going to talk more about Lodi as we get into it. But special show, we have not done a day trip to wine country to Lodi before. It's less famous than Napa and Sonoma, but the wines are just as good. Some would say even better. So for those of you who, when things are back off of quarantine or thinking of traveling, you definitely need to think about Lodi in California. It's an incredible region. We're heading to the amazing Oak Farm Vineyards. Oak Farm is a great winery in the area. Their calling card is they really focus on making wines that are true to the grape varietals themselves. They make wines from 14 different grape varietals, close to 30 different wine selections. So that's pretty awesome. To learn all about Oak Farm, you can visit oakfarmvineyards.com. And by the way, when we're doing the tasting in a little bit, listen up because there is an awesome deal to have these wines, if you're interested in having them for yourself at home, shipped out to you from California very affordably. As always, if you have questions during the session and tasting, please put them in the Q&A. We'll try to answer them on the fly and live and put them in the Q&A in Zoom. We'll tackle them. At New York Wine Events, we've had the great good fortune of working with Oak Farm Vineyards in the past at our events, especially at the Zinfandel Experience NYC. So it's with great pleasure, and it's my privilege to host today Dan Panella, who's the co-owner and director of winemaking at Oak Farm, and Sierra Zeiter, the winemaker. So we have two guests today. It's a twofer. Welcome, Dan and Sierra. It's great having you on the show today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us. We're excited and hope everybody enjoys this.
Well, I think they will. I think first off, since we have very much of a New York audience, I'd be great to get you to tell us, Dan and Sierra, a little bit more about Lodi. Our audience doesn't know it as well as Napa and Sonoma, but
sure,
is no less special.
So Lodi is kind of right in the epicenter heart of California. We are about 90 miles inland from San Francisco. We're about 30 minutes south of Sacramento, and it is a similar, I would say, climate to the Napa Valley, but the difference being with us is that we are more flat. We have warm days and cool nights. Because we have a direct influence coming from the San Francisco Bay, it gets really breezy and foggy there, and then in the afternoon here, that breeze comes in. And kind of cools everything off at night, and it's just a really good region for growing a wide variety of different kinds of varietals and stuff. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, we are right next to the McCallum River and the Delta, so like Dan was saying, we get hot during the day, and that helps to ripen our fruit fully and be able to get those jammy characteristics and kind of make sure the grapes are ripened. And then it gets cool at night because of the Delta and the Sacramento River kind of giving it a breeze. So able to cool the grapes down and be able to hold their acidity and kind of keep them balanced.
Yeah, folks here on the East Coast probably are less aware of the fact that those really hot sunny days are great for the grapes, but then also the cooling off at night is super helpful for them as well. So how did Oak Farm Vineyards get started in Lodi?
So around 2000 well, we bought the property in 2004. It's been called Oak Farm since the 1800s. We bought it, and we're planning on just kind of farming it and maybe having some like fundraisers or events out here because it was so pretty as a location. But then we kind of quickly realized that if we wanted to sort of not be beholden to the bigger wineries, that we were going to start making the wine on our own. And it took a while to kind of formulate how that was going to work. But ultimately, in 2010, we opened a small little kind of pilot tasting room, if you will, that served us for a few years until we were able to build a larger production facility, which you see in the image behind me here on the little virtual background, and that is our tasting room and production facility. The probably 2014, October 2014 is when that opened, and it's my family, we are from Italian and French descent. My family isn't like a super huge wine drinking family going years back or anything like that. This isn't something that we were always dreaming of doing. What it came down to is we've been I'm a third generation farmer in California. My grandfather came over a little around 100 years ago and has farmed a variety of things, but we decided it was time to get into grapes in the early 2000s, and when we did, we, like I said, quickly realized that we didn't want to have all this time and energy spent on at the time we were just growing Zinfandel, and we didn't want to see it all just kind of vanish with all the hard work. One year, we get paid a premium price. The next year, if the big winery had bought too much the year before, we wouldn't get hardly paid anything at all, and so it made sense for us. And then it was a matter of chance and happenstance that I got hooked up with a awesome winemaker named Chad Joseph that was my mentor and Sierra's mentor as well. And he still consults with us from time to time, comes in and kind of makes sure that everything's kind of staying on board and stuff. But it's been a kind of a long process, and here we are.
So let's pause on that for a second. So if it was a long journey, and it sounds like an amazing history with the family going back 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
What was the high in these last 10, 15 years since you
Mm-hmm.
what was the low?
So I would say the high is being able to open this facility and have people come in and be able to see it and get these kind of accolades that we get for our wines. We've got lots of awesome awards that we can tout and all that kind of stuff, but also just you see it on the people's faces and that more than anything is just, I mean, you see people not only do they like the spending time here when we're not all in quarantine, they like coming out here and spending time here, but the other thing is they also enjoy being able to just actually sip some really world-class Lodi wine that they it usually surprises people that we can do what we can do, because they're so used to only hearing about Napa or Sonoma or something when they're thinking of California wines, and then they're kind of pleasantly surprised at how well these wines come off. That's the high point. The low point for me, and if Sierra can chime in on these, I think the low point is when there was along the way in terms of getting things constructed and permits and all that kind of stuff. There were so many roadblocks and things and hurdles we had to jump over, and there were just times where it's like, gosh, is this going to be worth it? and are we going to actually be able to make this thing even work with all the little hoops we had to jump through, and we did eventually. But it's there were a lot of sleepless nights involved with just even constructing this place.
Yeah, I would say that the high points of being in Lodi and working for Oak Farm is that we get to experiment with a lot of different grape varieties. And so we're making, 28 different wines. We use about 15 to 16 different grape varieties, and they're all getting awards and medals, and they're all top notch. And so we get to play with those and experiment with those, which Dan and I love, but then also just walking into the tasting room and seeing people laughing and hanging out with their family and friends and enjoying these wines is the reason why I'm in this industry and I do what I do.
Yeah, I think that's a great note, Sierra. It's so fulfilling to see people discover something and enjoy it tremendously. Yeah. So I'm always pushing our audience at New York Wine Events, because we have our grand tasting events in and around New York City and a couple on Long Island, but then we have our tours where we take people to the vineyard country in New York State. And I'm always pushing at people, try a new grape varietal.
Yes.
Get out of your comfort zone. We all know Chardonnay, it's great. We all know Cab Sauv. Believe it or not, a lot of East Coasters don't know much about or aren't that familiar with Zinfandel from California. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about 14 different varietals, can you just run those down so that they know that I'm not just blowing smoke at them? Like, it's for real. Like, what are the varietals you guys are working with?
We have 4 different whites and 10 different reds. So the white is the most unique one is Fiano, which is an Italian variety. Most people have never had in the United States. Personally, my favorite wine to make and drink. Albarino, Sauvignon Blanc, and Chardonnay. Those are our whites. And then for our reds, we have all of the Bordeaux varieties. So Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Merlot, Malbec, Cab Franc. And then we have some Italian, Barbera, Sangiovese. And then we have Zinfandel.
And Primitivo, yeah.
Primitivo, which is a clone of Zin, and then Zinfandel as well.
And Petit Syrah.
Petit Syrah is the last one I meant.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I mean, talk about expanding our palate, us Americans that just drink 4 or 5 different grapes. Yeah. And you talk about Fiano, I mean, I remind our audience all the time, there's over 1,000 grape varietals in Italy alone.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the reason Fiano was chosen is the region of Italy my family's from, near Naples, this little area called Avellino. Fiano is the grape that they grow there, and it's we thought it'd be fun to kind of give a tip of the cap, a nod to it. But actually, the other reason being is that we planted it beyond just the story of that is also it's a fantastic white wine. So it's just it really kind of sneaks up and I could see people looking at that as a if they're looking for that hot new white grape that could go well in California or other warmer climates, certain parts of Oregon, certain parts of Washington, and so on. I think that is one that I will hope that other people give that grape a try, even if they're just going to plant just a little bit of it. If anybody who's willing to do some experimentation, it's definitely one worth trying.
And does Fiano do well in your climate?
Yeah. It's almost like a direct match, climate-wise, to where it is there. The only difference is that sometimes there in the wintertime they'll get a little bit of snow, which we typically do not. So,
but our latitude is the same as southern Italy, so very similar Mediterranean climates.
Yeah,
Fiano has a high acidity, and so our warmer weather really helps to lower that acidity to be able to be drinking acidity, not too high for our consumers.
Got it. So, Dan, what did the family do? What sort of farming was the family doing before the winery and before grapes?
Sure. I mean, it's been a lot of different things. A lot of row crops. Sugar beets was the first thing out of everything, but there was also tomatoes and things like that. But ultimately, we landed on walnuts and cherries. Was the kind of the and to this day, my family still grows that, and I helped out with that for years and years and years. And then when we bought this property, I switched over to in managing this, and it was my first foray into grapes. So I've really only been farming grapes for about a total of 16 years.
Yeah,
So
interesting. And it's worth noting for us East Coasters, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, where you're situated in Lodi, you're essentially in the San Joaquin Valley.
correct.
And
Yes, absolutely.
more north, I mean, middle north, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely more north, and you know, I guess if you think about it from our standpoint, I mean, and I have to look at a map of the United States, but you know, where like I think everybody thinks of sometimes on the East Coast they think about California like everything's L.A. or that it's you know that it's all. It'd be like all of us saying, well, the East Coast is only Florida. You know, for us, it's you know we're getting closer up to well, if you're looking at the East Coast, we'd be you know closer to like maybe North Carolina or something like that. So
Yeah, yeah. But and worth noting too, again, the awesome output of agricultural products from the San Joaquin Valley. I mean, it's
yeah,
probably the seventh wonder of the world.
yeah, we are America's breadbasket. I think California grows over 300 different commodities that are commercially widely available, and then there's a lot more other things that are grown that are not as widely available.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing place. Well, let's take a quick tour. I'm going to change some of my backgrounds here as I do. Walk us through what we're looking at.
Yeah. So that is our tasting room. That's kind of a view. If you were driving up, that's kind of what you would see. And there's a kind of a private patio on the east side where people come in and do reservations and sit down, and it's paired with local and sometimes international cheeses and different little cured meats and things like that. And it's got a bocce ball court there. If you can look all the way to your left, and you can see there's like kind of like a little
Yep.
water tower, and
Yep.
there's a bocce ball court there, so people can come out and do that. And that's anybody's welcome to come and do that. And there's a kind of a courtyard that you can see behind me here. That there's like a little reflection pool as you're coming in, and there's double-sided fireplace with all these. There's all these different places for people to come in and sit and hang out and stay a while and all that stuff.
That's awesome. And then what do we have here?
Oh,
That
that's Sierra tried, man.
the tank room. So this is the inside tank room, about 12 tanks. We have another 12, a little bigger outdoors. But as you can see, very clean and shiny. That is how it would look like if you were to walk out there today as well. We take sanitation to a high priority and make sure that there's no bacteria or yeast in our winery that would get into the wines.
I mean, I think people need to know like a really well-run winery, which obviously Oak Farm is you know, that kind of, there's technology, there's, you know, it's like a clean room when you're in the areas you're really making wine. We
Yeah.
did have, you answered that question, Dan. Yes, so for anybody joining a little after we started, we are in Lodi, California. Beautiful,
Yep.
beautiful Lodi, an hour and a half, pretty much due east of San Francisco, yeah?
Yep, it almost it's a straight shot. Yeah, if there was a road that went straight, it would be a 90-mile shot. Yep.
So for those of us ignorant New Yorkers, you go just kind of north across the the Golden Gate to get to Napa and Sonoma, or you go probably take the Bay Bridge, yeah, to go to.
Yeah, we would take the Bay Bridge, typically going into San Francisco. Otherwise, the other to go the other way is kind of roundabout, and yeah, that's our typical way of going.
Then you have this gorgeous interior,
Mm-hmm.
which again, this is where I'm coming when I visit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a large kind of horseshoe shaped tasting bar that can accommodate lots and lots of people. But there's just and lots of seating throughout the inside and outside of the winery. So in fact, like kind of behind me, you can kind of see some little like chairs that people can kind of sit in that little picture. For that background.
We do tastings for 6 or less people. You can just walk in. It's not by appointment, and it's $15 a tasting. And we rotate the wines about once a month, so you can come back and not be tasting the same wines.
I like that. That's what we call the winemaker special. Trust me. All right, so let's move on. Speaking of wine, let's jump into the wines. Which one are you guys going to taste and talk us through first?
So we will taste, this is what the label looks like. This is the 2019 Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay, and so for everybody watching, I have it up on my screen. That's the one that Sierra just put up. And so tell us a little bit about this wine and tasting notes and a food that it goes with.
So this Sauvignon Blanc comes from 2 different vineyards. So it's half from our state vineyard. We have about 7 acres of Sauvignon Blanc. And then the rest comes from More Fry ranches. And they have like 20 acres of Sauv Blanc that we get. This Sauv Blanc, we want it to be light and crisp. If you look at it, it's very light in color. You smell it, the aromas bounce straight into your nose. You get a lot of floral, tropical, and pyrazines, which is green grass, hay characteristics. And it's just a very light, easy to drink, kind of by the pool white wine.
So what's the perfect food while we're on quarantine and we're all ordering in a lot, or we're making comfort food? What's the perfect pairing?
I like anything with seafood with this personally, and like the other day, we had like a little ceviche thing with some shrimp, which drives
avocado.
Which drives Sierra nuts because she can't have shrimp anymore. We figured out she's allergic to shrimp. It's the only shellfish you can have crab, but not shrimp for some reason.
Yep.
So. Yeah.
All right, well, we'll do crab or lobster for Sierra.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's and then once you take a sip of it, those same aromas that you get kind of reciprocate and echo on the palate. So, you're getting a lot of melon, pineapple, green apple, and then this kind of acidic, light, refreshing finish, and kind of just wants you to kind of makes your mouth want another sip right away.
Excellent. And what does this retail for? How much is this on your
website? Yeah, typically you're going to see this for around $15-$16 when you're out in stores, and that's typically what we see it run around. Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. All right. So I'm assuming, Sierra, that we're going to go to the rosé next.
Yes.
Excellent.
So this one
Yes Way Rosé.
Yes Way.
2019. This is 100% Grenache rosé, so Grenache grape. And we do this true to a rosé, so we're not saignéing it. We are actually picking the grapes to make a rosé. So picking it like a white wine at a low sugar level to get 13% alcohol. We take these grapes and put them directly into the press and press the grapes off the skin right away. And that's how you get a light color. So it's a red grape treated like a white wine is how a rosé is made.
Right.
And so
And so for our viewers, many of whom are familiar with rosés made from Merlot or Pinot Noir, or even a blend of other red grapes like Cab Franc, what does Grenache? What's the sort of distinctive characteristic of a rosé made from Grenache?
I always think that it gives it more of a floral characteristic, and ours is a very light rosé. So sometimes you get those Merlots and Cab Francs that are tannic and bitter red grapes to begin with, and you get a little bit of a heavier, more fruity, jammy rosé.
Yep.
This one is a lighter grape in general, so you're gonna kind of get more of a light wine. So I get a lot of grapefruit as well as jasmine and a little bit of lavender in the aroma.
Awesome.
And then we treat it like a white wine and bottle it early. So when you take a sip of it, it is a very light mouthfeel, bright with a high acidity on the finish.
Yeah, my thing I like to tell most people with rosés is that you don't really want to get one most of the time. This isn't true across the board, but I'd say 95% of the time. You don't really want to pick one up that's older than maybe a year and a half old. At this point, when you're in the store, you want to be looking for ones that are 2019. The 18s, there might be a few that are still pretty good, but for some reason, rosé seems to kind of fall apart. It gets kind of flat in the bottle, and it's definitely one of those ones that you don't have to feel bad about, like just blowing right through it. That's one of the ones you don't want to lay down.
That's super interesting. I think that's it. So, because our audience is hugely enthusiastic about wine and discovering wines and learning about wine. That's a great note for people to remember. You're not aging your rosé. You're buying
Never.
rosé to consume it now.
Absolutely. The younger, the better on rosé.
Yep. And for those watching, this is the bottle to the side of me in the frame. And Dan, what's the retail on this one?
Typically, it's around the same as that Sauvignon Blanc, which is going to be in that $16 range. Might be a few bucks more depending on where you're picking it up from. But yeah, it's in that range when it's being picked up by most retailers. Yeah.
And on the winery website, it's about 15, 16.
On the winery website, it's actually it has to be more. The deal that we always have is that ours, unless you're a wine club member, it has to be just a little bit more than retailers, so that we're not undercutting them. Yeah. So on the winery website, it's actually 22. Yeah. Yeah.
And when I'm not sipping this outside in the sunshine, I think with food wise, I think asparagus goes great with this, like a asparagus prosciutto risotto maybe, or a mushroom asparagus risotto, something that's kind of creamy and more fat, because this is a little bit higher acidity, elegant.
Or even like a goat cheese.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
As well. That's awesome. All right, so Lodi, is not letting any grass grow under its feet when it comes to red wine. So I think we should take a look at the reds here. What's the first one we're going to do? We're looking at the Tivolis. Are we going to start with the cab or the blend?
The cab.
Okay, great.
So this is Tivoli. It has the same label as the next one we will be presenting, but this says Cabernet Sauvignon underneath. And Tivoli is actually a second label for us, and it means I love it, spelled backwards, if you look at the label closely. And it's a fun little play on words. It sounds Italian, and we used to think it means you want this in Italian, but it's actually just a made-up word that spells I love it
That is
backwards.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
funny.
it may actually mean that. We're not entirely sure. What happened was my parents went to they were in Lake Tahoe and they were at a wooden boat show, and there was somebody who had a boat and the name of it was Tivoli, and my dad, who speaks fluent Italian, he's like, I don't recognize that word. What does that mean? And they're like, oh, it's a slang word in a certain dialect. It means you want this. And I couldn't find anything to corroborate that online. But when we were talking about like, hey, what are we going to name this thing? They're like, what about that Tivoli thing? And so I went and checked, kind of, peeked in and checked it out, and I couldn't find anything. But I did figure out that it was "I love it" spelled backwards, based on something I saw on some web forum or whatever. I'm like, all right, fine, well, let's just go with that. That works. It's fun, and it's always interesting because people ask us, well, how do you pronounce it? And I'm like, well, it's a made up word, so you can kind of pronounce it however you want, really. But we say Tivoli, or I have, some people say Tivoli or something like that. And any of it, it's right. I'm like, I don't care as long as you just give it a try. So I think you'll like it.
Awesome.
This wine is about 85% Cabernet Sauvignon, and the rest is Petite Syrah, both coming from our estate vineyard. And we do a lot at Oak Farm to make the fruit top quality. So in our cab, we are pulling a lot of leaves, dropping a lot of fruit on the ground to keep those vines balanced and keep the fruit able to reach full maturity and kind of get past the green that they may carry and get to the true fruit that they should be expressing. So when you smell this, you're going to get a lot of the true cab characteristics, like black currant and a little bit of cherry raspberry, as well as some pyrazine, maybe a little bit. This one in particular has a little bit of eucalyptus in it, which
Yeah.
I personally like.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we age this for about 20 months in French and American oak barrels, about 30% in brand new barrels. And so you're going to get a little bit of vanilla and maybe a little bit of cedar notes to it. And I like this one because, so you smell it, it smells like this big fruity oak cab, and then you take a sip of it and it's very balanced on your palate. It's not too harsh in tannins like some cabs can be. It's a little bit of an easier drinking cab than some that you'll find from the
So it
store.
has that smoother finish, as opposed to when they get very tannic.
Yeah, and it definitely has some dryness to the back of your palate, but it's not over drying that some people don't like. It's a little bit more it's just a little easier to drink, I would say.
So now when you say this wine is 30% in new oak, does that mean that in the aging process, it gets moved around from one set of barrels into another? Or
So, no, it just means that we will specifically buy a certain amount of brand new barrels for this wine program. And we think that 30% is the number for this cab. We want it to show some oak and take some oak characteristics, but we don't want it to be overly oaky where it overpowers the fruit. So 30% of this wine will go into brand new barrels. The rest will go into barrels that we've used in the previous years.
and then in the end you blend
And then in the
combine.
end, before bottling, we'll pump out of all of those barrels into one tank
Yep.
and then bottle that tank.
Right. Okay. So it's 30% of the wine that's being used was in new oak, and 70% was in not new oak, and then
Yeah.
you combine them at the end and bottle.
Yes.
I didn't mean to get too specific on that, but it's always interesting.
No, it's good.
To me, like, how that works.
Yeah. A lot of people get confused, and you kind of have to see it to realize, but a lot of people don't understand what a new barrel is, and it's
Right.
never touched wine before.
Yep.
Right.
where you get a lot of the flavor from the oak from those. Uh,
Absolutely.
and how much is this one retail?
Yeah. So again, you're looking at a little under $20. On the website, it's 22. But you should be able to kind of find it out and about if you're not shopping from us. There's some retailers that have it for a little bit less than that. And it's one of those ones that we try to like over deliver for the price. And that was an effort that we made because we came to this later. Like I said, we started around 2010. It was already fairly saturated, and the way we could stand out is good bang for the buck, and that's what we're going for here.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but again, because Lodi, which is an amazing wine region, can make and is making wines that are better values, but they're outstanding wines.
Yeah.
So I think I would compare this, push me back if you disagree, to a 50 or a 60 or even higher dollar price point Napa.
Yeah. We've done blind tastings with wines along those price points with in this case cab, and regularly we'll see ours in the top three, or sometimes it'll be top pick depending on who's judging it and all that kind of stuff. So it is very common for us to do considerably well, all things considered. What do you think, Sierra?
Yeah, I think that ours definitely compare. You always get a little humbled in blind tastings, but you also get sometimes a little bit of that truth to it where we are up to that level and we are up to that par. It's just pricing wise in this region, everyone prices them a little lower.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, I think that's important though. Listen, as those of us who are wine enthusiasts and wine drinkers, to know that a Lodi Cab or a Lodi Zinfandel can be so reasonably priced.
Yep.
But in a blind tasting will go up against, hold its own with, be at the same level or even beat a $50, $60, $70 Napa bottle.
For sure.
And that's, hey, that's a headline, guys, right there. You heard it on the show today.
Yeah.
The Lodi values are there, and that's one of the things that I love about the region. When I first got into wine 15 plus years ago, the thing that knocked my socks off was discovering California Zinfandel, red Zinfandel.
Yeah, and
You'd always heard about Bordeaux. You'd always heard about, Brunello or
mm-hmm.
Barolo from Italy.
Absolutely.
You always heard about Cabernet Sauvignon from California, but I had a bottle of red Zinfandel that literally inspired me to pursue this industry as what I do for a vocation.
Wow.
One of the reasons why it actually we're able to do things a little bit less expensive than the Napa Valley is just the cost of the ground here is a tenth of the cost of what it is over there, literally, because they have very finite planting space that they could actually even grow grapes. It's a very
Real estate.
Yeah, it's a very small amount of real estate, whereas ours is. So to be clear, the Lodi appellation has more grapes than Napa and Sonoma combined. And the reason for that is it's a larger landmass area, and it's all very consistent because it's for the most part because it's also quite flat. And while we don't have the beautiful rolling hills that the Napa Valley does, we also have a lot more consistency because the ground is because it's flat. From one side of the vineyard to the other, it's usually pretty consistent. Whereas like when you're up on hills, and Sierra can tell you this, she used to work for Dow in Paso. She would tell you that there's all these different little how many lots did you say when you were telling me?
It was 100-acre area, and there was about 40 different blocks.
Yeah.
because every part of the hill has a different attribute to it, and it changes a little bit of the ripeness and when it will be picked and ready. Whereas here, we're in 70 acres and we have 14 different blocks. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's only because there's 14 different grapes. Otherwise, if it was all one grape, it would essentially be pretty much all maybe 2 blocks. I don't know.
No, that's cool. Well, listen, it's a place that people need to discover, and I think that's been happening over the recent past. All right, should we get to the last wine, the grand
yeah.
finale? This is
Hmm.
the Tivoli or the Tivoli
Yes.
blend. I love it.
So this is, instead of the Cab Sauv, this is the red blend. And the red blend is 66% Zinfandel, 8% Primitivo, and then it has 18% Barbera and 8 Petit Syrah. So it has 4 different grapes in it. I kind of count the Zin and Primitivo as one,
Hmm.
and that is gonna give you that jamminess that you get when you come to Lodi, and that's what the Zin does in Lodi. You get a lot of strawberry, raspberry, um, jammy characteristics. Then this blend is cool because you have Barbera and Petit Syrah added to it. So that Barbera is a lighter grape, higher acidity. So gonna kind of bring some brightness, some fresh strawberry, some floral attributes to this wine that kind of help balance out that really jamminess of the Zin. Then you have the Petit Syrah, and that's going to help with the structure at the end. So the back of your palate, when you take a sip, will kind of have some of that structure from the Petit Syrah. But when I smell it, it's just like I was kind of describing earlier, the fruitiness as well as the violets and the floral characteristics from that Barbera. Um, and we age this for about 10 months, so a little bit less than the Cab, in about 25% new French and American oak.
We also make Barbera by itself. It's a kind of a favorite around here, both internally, but also from the people that come to our tasting room and all that kind of stuff. Barbera is just a fantastic grape.
It's amazing. I was in Piedmont or Piemonte
Hmm. Hmm.
last fall, and man, the Barbera, the Barolos great.
Yeah,
Barbaresco's spectacular. And the
sure.
Barbera, neither of those two got anything on the Barbera is just as good. They're, in some ways better.
Yeah, it's such an undervalued grape, and I hope to see it kind of transition into being something bigger. It certainly warrants it. And one of the things that Sierra mentioned earlier about the Fiano and the Barbera's in the same realm, where what's nice is that it maintains its acidity, so it's not one of those ones that'll typically come off as being well, winemaking term we would use is like flabby, basically meaning that it kind of just sort of drinks flat. Like it's not, it doesn't really excite your palate at your tongue at all. And so Barbera has a tendency to have this brightness, cherry kind of cool thing going on to it. And like she said, when you add it with Zinfandel in this case, the Zinfandel has some of that jam, but then the Barbera brightens it up, and then the Petit Syrah adds this kind of backbone tannic structure, but not overly so. We have to be careful how much Petit Syrah we put in that blend, because Petit Syrah will take over any wine that you put it in. It just becomes after a certain percentage point, it's like all you can taste is Petit Syrah.
It's
And
deceptive. The name petite, which means small
yeah,
in
Yeah.
French, there's nothing small
not a
about it.
small
No,
grape, not a
no,
small wine. No.
no. It's poorly named too, because even the clusters. I mean, Sierra can tell you the grapes aren't even that small. I'm not
Yeah.
even. I'm not even. I mean, in France they actually call it Derif, but because that's it has to do with the guy that helped yeah, help like promote this grape and stuff. But anyway, it would probably be better served with that name. But we'll roll with it. It's people like saying Petit Syrah, and that's good.
So two quick questions, guys.
Yes.
perfect food for this red blend. Dan, go first.
So for me, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I actually like this is like your pizza wine. And I know it doesn't, it's just
Doesn't
it.
sound ridiculous at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like it's not is it's not some super wild, sexy thing, but it pizza. I mean, it would just be it would rock with that. Yeah. What do you think,
And
Sarah?
it's similar in the sense that I think red sauce would go really well, but I think a chicken parm over
Oh yeah.
polenta,
Oh
something
yeah.
Yeah, now
There
you're
you
creamy.
go.
talking.
Yeah.
But I think I think we're on the same page with red sauce
Yeah.
wise would go very well with this wine.
And
For
then
sure.
we didn't choose a perfect food. So Sierra first for the caps off.
I would say, and this may be cliche, but I don't think that it needs to be with a meat with any sauce. So I think just a steak, put some salt and pepper on the steak, put it on the grill. Um, you're outside with your family, just barbecuing it up, some grilled veggies and steak.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with rack of lamb. I don't get to have it too often, but when I do, cab is a definite way for me to go. So.
Yeah, it sounds like a great combination. All right, so where do we get these wines?
So you can get them at oakfarmvineyards.com for sure, and this and a whole host of other wines for that matter.
I
But the
chose these
yeah,
four wines to taste today because these are most prevalent in New York.
yes,
Um, and so you guys will see these retailed there, but we have, you know, 20 other wines on our website that you guys can try.
Well,
yeah,
if everybody can see, can you guys see my screen here with the
mm,
Yes.
yes,
oakfarmvineyards.com? This is a big deal, everybody, because buy 6 or more bottles and get free shipping from California. I mean, shipping from California on 6 bottles is probably, I don't know,
yeah, 40.
65 bucks.
Yeah, it could be 40, 50, $60 depending on where it's going. Yeah, and what your carrier is and all that. Yeah.
And given how affordable these wines are, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how amazing the Lodi wines are. They're right there with Sonoma, with Napa, Paso Robles. So definitely something awesome to take advantage of. I think, let's see, we have a question. We have a couple questions. It looks like, Dan, you answered Liz here.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, excellent. And it looks like Zaida is a red meat. She votes for red meat with the reds here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's always a good choice. Well, listen, it's been really amazing hanging with you guys today. I'm back out here in front of the winery, and I can't tell you how beautiful it is in Lodi, and we got to get out there soon.
Yes, please do.
And we'll let everybody know. We'll email folks about how to get the wines and make sure they get the deal. We have one last question. When's the best time of year to come and visit?
Um, it depends on what you're looking for. A harvest is fun because you get to kind of see things in action. And it's definitely going to be warm at that time. But usually, normally I would say like right around now.
Yeah. Spring.
Yeah. But if you have allergies, it's probably not the most ideal time because there's a lot of pollen blowing around in the air. But I would say anytime between now and say the late October, something like that. Those are the better times probably in terms of getting kind of your best overall experience. But I mean, it is California. We don't have anything close to weather like you guys do. So I mean, realistically, you can come year round and it's still pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I see that there's one more question up there.
Yep. The Patricia wants to know: can you accommodate private parties for dinner tasting?
And yes, we have a couple different areas of our winery that we can hold events. We actually have an old barn where we hold weddings and wedding receptions, rehearsal dinners, Christmas parties, about 300 people. And then we have a luxury barrel room, and then also another room, actually one room that I'm sitting in right now, that can hold a little bit less people, anywhere from groups of 20 to 150, 200. So we do events all the time. We have an event planner here on site.
Yeah, and while we don't serve food per se, I mean we do have some like prepackaged things that people can buy, salamis and cheeses and things like that. But if you were coming in from out of town and we wanted to organize something with like a caterer and stuff, we could have stuff catered, or we could have just basically. There's some local restaurants that we work with that'll just drop stuff off, and just you just let us know what if there's any food allergies and all that kind of stuff, and then they kind of set these things out for you, pick a menu and all that kind of stuff. So that's an option as well.
That's awesome. Well, Dan, Sierra, thank you so much. This has been a welcome respite from another slightly cloudy and cold day. We've been having a cold spring in the East Coast. So it's awesome to spend time with you guys, learn about the wines. And I think we've got some folks who are excited just hearing the conversation, seeing the images about coming out sometime soon. And I know you'll be open, and we'll get that going. So thank you so much for being part of Day Trip to Wine Country. And let's do it again sometime soon. We'll pair a meal with some wines.
Oh, we'd love that.
Us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Hope to see you guys here soon.
Yeah,
All right, guys.
for sure.
Stay safe, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.